So I'm assuming the best way to avoid all the April Fool's Day shenanigans is just to stay inside, read, and bake a cake for Bread and Forge. Hello lovely people, my name's Nicole and today I am doing my March wrap-up. So I had a pretty good reading month this past March. I read 9 books, one of them being a graphic novel, and almost all of them were 5 stars. I really enjoyed the books I read, and so let's just jump right in and get started. The first thing I read was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This was actually a reread for me, but I wanted to reread it so that I could read the rest of the series, or the 2 that are out right now, because they've just been sitting on my shelf for a while and I really loved the first one. So the plot of this story is that there's a girl whose entire family is made up of seers, and all her life she's been told that if she kisses her true love, he'll die. And then one day she meets the guy who she thinks is her true love, and things progress from there. So I enjoyed this very much. Probably actually I think I enjoyed it more the second time around. I gave it 5 stars. Then I continued with the Raven cycle by reading The Dream Thieves, also by Maggie Stiefvater. I'm not going to talk about the plot of this because it would spoil the Raven Boys. But I also really loved this. Probably even more than the Raven Boys. And I gave this one 5 stars as well. Then I finished off the books in the Raven cycle that are currently out by reading Blue Lily, Lily Blue, again by Maggie Stiefvater. Loved this one even more. They just keep getting better and better and better. And these books are great. They really are. I love Blue's relationship with all the boys and how they all just love each other so much, and I really need Adam and Ronan to be a thing. It's not, but maybe one day. Maybe in book 4, we'll see. Then I read Hold Me Closer, the Tiny Cooper story by David Levithan. This is the play that Tiny Cooper writes in Will Grayson, Will Grayson by David Levithan and John Green. And I loved this. This was so good. I loved Will Grayson, Will Grayson, and so I pretty much just ran right to Barnes & Noble when this came out. And I marked all the pages that I loved. Basically, this book was so funny, so lighthearted and enjoyable and lovable, and it was really fun seeing all the sort of little Easter eggs to random things in Will Grayson, Will Grayson. It was wonderful. I definitely gave this one 5 stars. And continuing with the amazing books is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Oh my god, this book. This book. I loved it so much. If you don't know what this is about a guy named Kel who can travel between different Londons, each with varying levels of magic, and he sort of brings messages to each ruler throughout the dimensions. But he's also a smuggler, and that gets him into some trouble. And it is so good. So good. I loved this. Like, it's insane how obsessed with this book I am. First of all, I would just like to say, Rye is perfect, and I love him. Also, it was sort of left ambiguous in the book, but heavily implied, but Victoria Schwab retweeted something confirming, that Rye is bisexual. Representation? Yes. I love it. It's so good. 5 stars, 100%. I wrote a full review on Goodreads that I'll link in the doobly-doo if you want a more sort of in-depth analysis, because right now I'm just kind of gushing over how much I love it. It's not even been a month since I read it, and I already want to reread it. The next thing I read was We All Looked Up by Tommy Wallach. This was sort of a little bit of an impulse buy for me. I was in Barnes & Noble, and I'd heard of it back before it came out, and it just looked kind of interesting, so I picked it up. I liked it. I didn't like it as much as I was hoping to. it was more action-y than I was expecting. I think I would have liked it more if I had gone in with different expectations. So the plot is that there's a group of a bunch of teenagers who go to high school, and they all have their own, you know, labels and who they are in high school. And then one day they find out that in 2 months a comet is going to crash into the earth and kill everyone. So then they sort of have to shed their labels and, you know, learn more about each other and figure out who they want to be. And I expected it to be more along the lines of, like, finding yourself and, you know, high school politics and that kind of thing. But it was really more of an action book. Mostly, I guess, it was, I expected it to be character-driven, where it turned out to be action-driven. So, it's not that it wasn't good, it just wasn't as I expected, so I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read a graphic novel, and that is The Wicked and the Divine, The Faust Act, and this is by Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey. The story of this is that every 90 years, 12 different gods from mythologies around the world are reincarnated on Earth, and basically they are superstars for 2 years and then they die. I really enjoyed this. I love the art in it. Here's a good page. It's so cool, really colorful. That one's a cool one. So I really, really liked this. My only problem was that a couple times I found it hard to sort of keep all the different gods straight, and so I got a little bit confused sometimes. So I gave this 4 stars. Then I read Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and I was a little apprehensive going into this just because this has been so hyped recently. Epic Reads has been hyping it up a lot, other booktubers have been talking a lot about it, and so I was a little nervous that it wouldn't live up to expectations, but I think it did. It was pretty good. Looking back on it, I think there were a couple parts that were sort of very much stereotypical young adult tropes, but they didn't bother me when I was reading it, so I'm not going to it's not really going to affect my rating. But I really enjoyed this. This is about a girl who lives in a world where people are divided by red bloods and silver bloods, and the silver bloods are the elite, they are the royals, and they have magical powers, and she finds out that as a red blood, she has these powers that she shouldn't have, and then things go to hell, because the silver bloods don't want the other red bloods to know that a red blood has powers, because that would just throw everything out of the norm, or something like that. But I really, really enjoyed this. Again, I wrote a full review for this on Goodreads, which I will link in the doobly-doo. Basically, I thought Mare was a fantastic character who was super kick-ass, but, like, not in a way that was like she's unrealistically kick-ass. She learned to be kick-ass, and she sort of found her own strength. She also had a really great, realistic morality. You know, there were things that were going on that she was a part of that she wasn't really sure were right, but at the same time, she had to sort of find that balance between what's right and what's necessary to save her people and to do what needs to be done. And I think that her struggle to find that balance was really honest and realistic, and it kind of just made me love her so much. And so I gave this 5 stars. And the last book that I read was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in the Grisha trilogy. I'm currently reading the sequel. I really loved this. This is about a girl who, it's another high fantasy, and this is about a girl who finds out she suddenly has these magical powers. It's set in a really cool sort of old Russian-esque world, and there's a really cool system of magic, and just, it's really interesting. My only problem was that while I was reading it, a number of things stuck out to me that were just sort of like, oh, that's exactly like in this other young adult fantasy novel. Okay. And it's not that it, like, made it a bad story or a cliche story or whatever, it just, every once in a while that would sort of stick out to me, particularly because, one of the major plot twists that happens in this, had happened in a book that I just read earlier at some point. I'm trying to be vague so I don't give anything away for any books, but it's very similar plot twist to a couple of other young adult fantasies that I read, and that frustrated me a bit. But I did definitely enjoy this. I flew through it in like a day, and now I'm reading the sequel, and so I gave this 4 stars. Alrighty, those are all the books I read this month. Let me know what you read in the comments down below. I love you, and I will see you later. Bye.